Welcome to Strange Bites, the podcast where we stir up the world's weirdest, wildest, and most mind-bending new discoveries and serve them up in a piping hot 15 minutes or less. Today, we're diving into a fresh discovery, a wild tale of music and mushrooms that will have you saying, "That's groovy, baby." This is Strange Bites, Episode 2, Orchestra of the Undead. Trust me, it's weirder than whatever's growing in your fridge right now. In the dim glow of a cluttered London studio, where forgotten canvases leaned like weary ghosts against the walls, Elias Thorne sat alone. He was a painter once, renowned for his abstract swirl of colors that critics called visions from the subconscious. But inspiration had fled him years ago, leaving him only empty bottles and unpaid bills. The year was 2025, and Elias had hit rock bottom. Desperate for a spark, he stumbled upon a bizarre TikTok video by an artist named Tarun Nayar. Oyster mushrooms hooked the synthesizers. Their hidden bioelectric pulses turned into haunting melodies. Modern biology, Nayar called it. Fungi as collaborators, composing in real time. Elias laughed at first. Mushrooms making music? But the sound, it was ethereal, like whispers from a forgotten dream. He dug deeper online, discovering the work of Jonathan Paul Ross and Andy Kidd, the duo behind Bionic and The Wires. They've been experimenting since 2025, attaching non-invasive biosensors to the caps and mycelium of oyster mushrooms. These fungi, they explained, weren't silent decomposers. They pulsed with life, generating tiny millivolt electrical signals as ions zipped across their cell membranes. It happened during everyday miracles, growth spurts, sucking nutrients from rotting wood, or reacting to touch, moisture, or even the subtlest environmental shifts. The signals mimic neural activity, spikes of energy that could be captured and converted. Ross and Kidd used electrodes to feed the data into MIDI interfaces, translating the fungus's thoughts into digital commands. These became notes, rhythms, and drones. Touch the mushroom, a crescendo. Feed it nutrients, a frantic beat. In one setup, the signals even drove tiny robotic arms, plucking strings or tapping drums like a spectral band. Elias's hands trembled as he ordered a cheap biosensor kit and a cluster of oyster mushrooms from a local market. What if they're not just signals, he muttered in his empty room. What if they're memories? The idea gnawed at him. Science had long hinted at fungal intelligence. Mushrooms could remember past stimuli, navigate mazes for food, and send electrical warnings through their vast underground network to neighboring plants about dangers like pests. What if, in decay, they echoed the lives they'd consumed? That night, under the flicker of a single bulb, Elias set up his rig in the corner of his studio. The mushrooms, pale fan-shaped clusters, set in a damp tray of decaying oak chips, their mycelium threaded like white veins through the wood. He gently pressed electrodes into the caps, careful not to harm them. The wires snaked to his laptop, patched into a modular synthesizer. At first, nothing, just static. Then a drip of water from a leaky ceiling hit the tray. The signal spiked. Ion rushed in response to the moisture. The synth responded, a low throbbing bass note, swelling into a chord that vibrated the air. Elias froze. It wasn't random noise. It had rhythm, like a heartbeat from the earth. He leaned closer, whispering, "What are you saying?" As the hours blurred into dawn, the music evolved. He experimented, just like the pros. A pinch of sugar water triggered frantic arpeggios, wild and urgent as the fungus absorbed the nutrients. A gentle prod with a brush sent ripples of melody, soft and exploratory, mimicking how the mycelium might probe for decay. Elias recorded it all, layering the sounds into tracks that felt alive, ambient electronica laced with alien whispers. Something felt off. The patterns repeated, almost narratively, a rising tension, a climax of discord, then resolution and decay like drones. By the third night, Elias was obsessed. He read about a 2025 experiment in Tintwhistle Forest near Manchester. Ross and Kidd had wired the oyster mushrooms in the woods. Their signals pulsed LED lights. Featured in Nature magazine that September, it showed how fungi communicated over distances. Electrical spikes sharing resources of warning or threats. Elias imagined his mushrooms doing the same, networking in secret. He pushed further, rigging tiny robotic arms to play a discarded MIDI keyboard. The signals commanded the bots. A spike here for a key press, a dip there for a drum beat. The studio filled with an orchestra, pianos tinkling like raindrops on leaves, synths wailing like wind through graves. But as the mushrooms aged, feeding on the oak's rot, the music darkened. Dissonant chords crept in, unresolved tensions that made Elias's skin crawl. One stormy evening, as thunder rattled the windows, Elias noticed the signals intensifying without his input. The mushrooms were responding to the humidity, the vibrations, but the melody had shifted. It wasn't just reaction, it felt like recollection. He played back the recordings, and hidden in the layers were echoes, faint distorted voices. No, impossible. Yet science backed the eerie feelings. Fungi decomposed organic matter, recycling the memories of the dead things through chemical and electrical traces. What if his oak chips held remnants of ancient trees, or worse, buried secrets from the supplier's yard? Elias whispered to the cluster, "Who are you?" A gust of wind from the storm knocked over something in the yard. It startled him, and the signals surged, ions flooding in alarm, and the synth screamed a high-pitched wail. The robotic arms thrashed, pounding keys in a frenzy. It was chaos, but there was a pattern there. The music mimicked a story, rising from birth like pulses to a decaying dirge. He realized these weren't just signals, they were symphonies of the undead, the fungi channeling the essence of what they'd consumed, turning rot into requiem. Panicked, he yanked out the electrodes. Silence fell, but the room felt heavier, the air thick with unspoken notes. Elias stepped back, heart pounding, the mushrooms set innocent, pale fans in the tray. But in his headphones, the final track looped, a whispery coda fading like a ghost's sigh. The next day, Elias uploaded his Orchestra of the Undead to the web. It went viral, just like Nayar's videos, millions of views on TikTok and Instagram, fans raving about the haunted vibes. Ross and Kidd even reached out, praising his setup. Fungi have stories, they said. You're just the translator. But Elias never touched the rig again. Sometimes in the quiet of his studio, he swore he heard faint hums from the corner, signals without wires, composing in the dark. The mushrooms, after all, had been alive long before humans dreamed of music. And in their decay, if you believe, they remember everything. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you liked the story and learned something new. If you enjoyed this fungi fable, let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay strange and question everything.